Hey everyone, this is a tarot reading for Neptune going direct in Pisces. So we're going from retrograde to regular orbit. And not so Neptune is the planet of imagination, connection to spirituality, the collective unconscious, idealism, dreams, both the type you have when you're making goals and your sleeping dreams. It is also a time for an undoing or an unlearning of things, beliefs, thoughts, ideas that you had previously, but now you need to reconsider them. And also there's a dissolution. So what that means is it's a breaking down of something. In this case, it could be of the conscious collective or the collective conscious. And another interpretation of Neptune Direct is that it's a clearing of, I keep hearing the word fog. So it's like a clearing of the fog. So perhaps during Neptune retrograde, there has been some sort of confusion. And now we're going into a period of clarity. I'm going to pull a card to get a feel for what the reading will have, or like what the theme for the reading will be. I'm using the Supra Oracle, S-U-P-R-A. And then I'll pull a card from the Sacred Symbols Oracle. So the Supra is a little bit more serious, and I feel like the Sacred Oracle it brings in some fun and lightheartedness. So we'll have a little bit of seriousness and some fun. We'll see what happens though. So what message do you carry for us in this Neptune going direct in Pisces time? We have the daemon. And daemon in a psychological sense represents how do I explain it? Daemon is the creative spirit, or it's the little angel and devil on your shoulder. Although it's more benevolent than it is a demon. Though the name could be confused with demon sometimes, but the daemon is like it's like the spirit of your, this is gonna sound weird, but it's like the spirit of your unconscious or subconscious. I don't know how else to describe it without being, no. So the daemon is the spirit. Your spirit, the spirit, not your soul, but the spirit that kind of guides you to do certain things, or it guides you to be, the word I want to use is attracted to certain things. Yeah, okay, so let's leave it at that. And so with Neptune going direct in Pisces, that could mean that your spirit, your essence, your daemon is becoming a little bit more, its ability to influence you. And it's not a separate entity. It is still part of you, but it's the part of yourself that is deeply in your unconscious. And God, If you don't, listening as someone who doesn't know Jungian psychology, it does sound like you're crazy when you talk about Damon, but it's not at all that. It's not any kind of schizophrenic thing, and it's not a mental illness. This isn't a separate entity. It is a part of you. It is the thing that speaks to you in dreams. It is the thing that creates the dreams, because when you're dreaming, you are not in control of what you dream about or how you dream of it, if that makes sense. So like, for example, when you sleep, when you dream, your ego is not in control of what you are dreaming. So like, let's say you dream of your sister and she's wearing a pink tutu and a plaid blazer, and like, when your sister would never dress that way, but she is dressing that way in your dream, that's your daemon speaking to you in the familiar guise of your sister, but she's doing something completely different than what she would be doing in real life. So like, you're not in control of how your sister appears to you in your dreams. You're not in control of how things appear to you in your dreams. That is the domain of the daemon. And perhaps there is some clarity with Neptune going direct in Pisces, where your daemon is becoming stronger at this time. And so your dreams are becoming louder and you're able to remember them more vividly upon waking up. By the way, you do not have to have your Neptune in Pisces to listen to this reading. This is a collective reading. I'm just harnessing the energy of Neptune going direct in Pisces to give you all a collective reading. Now I'm going to pull a card from the Sacred Symbols Oracle. Let's see, what message do you have for us for Neptune going direct in Pisces? We have the element of water, and when we think about water, we want to think about the water signs, which is Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And when we think about the elements, we want to think about their power. We want to think about what water does, what its power is, and what its energy is. And so we want to remember that we are water. We feel, we purify with it. Water carries emotion, and so symbolically speaking, it carries emotion. And so we use water to help us feel, and we use water to help cleanse, and it helps us release and go with the flow, and it is the element of love and affection and feeling. But the other thing we want to remember is that, not to get too dark with the element of water, but when you think about water, it drowns. It has the ability to make us stop breathing. And it floods. I keep thinking about I think it was King Louis XIV who said, before he passed away, he said, "After me comes the flood." Like, once he passed away, the control he had over his kingdom was going to release the floodgates, and things were just going to be basically chaos. And it was, because after King Louis XIV came the French Revolution. But anyway, so we can think about floods not just in like flooding of the plains, or mass floods, or like we can also think about them figuratively or metaphorically or symbolically, and where like floods can overwhelm us. We can get an overwhelm of emotion flooding into us. And we could get submerged in certain emotions where we don't know what's what. Or we could like emotionally get pulled in the undertow where we can't tell. Like our emotions are so strong and powerful that we can't tell which way is up. So that is the power of water. And Pisces is, like I was saying before, it's a water sign. And I believe Neptune is a water sign, a water element as well, or a water planet. So we're very much in this. Oh, and if we look at the daemon card, water is spilling out from the receptacle here. And the person is in chains, so I'm willing to bet that those chains are going to be unlocked and the person is going to be released, which is a very watery moment because water releases. So, with that being said, so that's the general theme of the reading. What message does the tarot have for us on this Neptune Direct in Pisces? First card is the Star reversed. We have the 8 of Swords, and we have the 8 of Pentacles. So I'm thinking, okay, so the Star reversed makes me think of disappointment, unfulfilled dreams, a feeling of unsettledness. Is that a word? An unsettled feeling. So like you feel restless. I guess is the more correct way of saying that. There's also a possibility that some of us out there are kind of in denial of spirituality. So we could be atheists, or we are just completely dismissive of the idea of spirituality, that it's sort of pointless. But if you, again, I'm going to go back to dreams because that's what Neptune is about, partly about. If we took a look at our dreams and wondered about where they come from, we can kind of get closer to the idea of spirituality, or our personal spirituality. Because we don't, as a modern society, as a modern world, we don't really place much stock in dreams. They sometimes are so weird and out there and chaotic that there's like, it feels like there's no meaning to it. We could find meaning if we, one thing I will say, if you already don't feel like spirituality is a thing that is important, well, one, you wouldn't be here, and two, you wouldn't be able to find meaning in dreams or anything else, or anything related to spirituality, because you're completely dismissing it. But I feel like for some of you out there, that might be the starting point of like, well, of asking yourself of why are you so dismissive of it when you have ready access to your spirituality through your dreams. But again, if you're not a spiritual person, you won't find that gate in your dreams because they mean nothing to you. But maybe this Neptune Direct in Pisces is the opening of the floodgates towards thinking about your spirituality and giving it a little bit more meaning than you have been, and maybe realizing that your personal spirituality, whether you're religious or not, has a point, has a meaning, and I'm seeing the Eight of Pentacles, and the Eight of Pentacles is the work card. So all of this is going to require a lot more work than you first realize. And I can speak about that from personal experience. It's when you decide that your dreams have meaning, you're basically giving yourself sleep homework. Like, when you wake up from a dream, you can write it down or write it in a notes app on your phone, and then you can think about your dream throughout the day or the next couple of days until you have your next dream. And if you keep a long enough record of your dreams, you can start to see patterns in them, and that is your daemon. In other words, your psyche or your unconscious trying to communicate with you. And you'll start to see that there's a whole personality in there. And again, it's not separate from you, it is a part of you. But like I said, it is going to require a lot of work, and it's essentially giving yourself homework. I have loved ones who I've tried to... Something I really want to point out is that, and maybe I already pointed it out, but I can't remember, but the daemon card is pouring water from a receptacle, and you could say that it's pouring water from the star card, right? Or like this, because the star symbolizes, well, the stars appear at night, and we dream at night, but anyway, the star card reversed also has a receptacle that's pouring water, right? And it's reversed, so we could say that the water is being poured back in to the into the pitcher, vase, whatever, and that could be a symbol that we are ready to pour in the work necessary to receive these messages from our dreams. Another thing I want to point out is that the Eight of Swords also has water at the very bottom. And what this card makes me think, this is where I'm getting the denial of the spirituality aspect of our dreams, of our journey. And what I'm thinking, what it makes me think of is there is a fear of taking that first step towards being more spiritual, because it often feels like we're delusional, right? And it's partly, again, what Neptune is about, is we are giving in to, well, not giving in, but like there are certain parts of our lives where we are in fact delusional, and for whatever reason we want to believe in, I don't know, we want to believe that our lives are special. Oh my god, that's going to sound so cynical, but people who are not into spirituality or who are atheists don't really see a point in believing spiritual practices or whatever. Like they don't like it, or they can't connect to these things because it does feel delusional. It's an illusion. But they're missing the point that their lives are on a spiritual journey, regardless of whether they believe in it or not. Simply for the simple reason that they have dreams. we all have dreams, and that is a really strong source for connecting to the spiritual realm. I just want to say that I don't like how overzealous I was being before, and I apologize like a few minutes ago, but hopefully I got my point across. Anyway, the other thing I want to point out with the Eight of Swords is that there are just going to be people in general that are deliberately denying this part of themselves, because they don't want to feel like they're crazy or delusional or losing touch with reality. But I would make a really strong, I would point to the fact that these highly logical people would be able to make sense of their journey if they have to allow it in, right? And so that requires a loosening of what they believe reality to be. And so they have a really strong attachment to science and rationality, and that's not to say that that's a wrong stance to take. But when you work with your dreams, or when you go into the spiritual realm, or when you take the step towards a spiritual path, you start to understand things a little differently, and logical people don't want to let go of that. So what I'm saying with the Eight of Swords is that this denial is deliberate because they don't want to feel like they're losing touch with reality. But could it be said that those on the spiritual path, a true, authentic spiritual path, and not new agey stuff, but or cult stuff, but a true spiritual, authentic path, could it be said that though they are the ones who are more in touch with reality because they understand that everything is connected? And anyway, but, okay, so with the Eight of Pentacles, even if you're a spiritual person, we still do need that balance of bringing things back down to earth. We can't be spiritual all the time because we live in the modern world. And the modern world, our current reality now, requires us to have some sense of logic and be able to maneuver through this world. But we also don't want to lose touch with that spiritual essence, because then we lose touch with the meaning of our lives. Does that make sense? And so if you're someone who has lost touch with your sense of meaning, we could ask the question of, where are you deliberately denying your spirituality? And have you put it, perhaps what we want to ask is, have you put it on the back burner? Have you been ignoring it for some reason, when you could say you used to be a spiritual person, but then, I don't know, life got in the way, or something happened where your perspective shifted, and maybe it's reshifting into something completely different than from what it was. Okay, so then we have the Five of Wands, and so it was indeed some sort of conflict that caused this shift in perspective, or maybe another thing is, maybe you had a challenging time with the differences in other people's spiritual paths. And the other thing I want to point out is, Five of Wands makes me think that of Like, people can only meet you where you are. And so the reason that there was conflict is because they're not at that level yet, or maybe even you're not at that level yet of the other person, or whatever it is. And the issue here is that we're holding on too tightly to what our personal experience and our personal idea of the spiritual path is. And so perhaps what's happening is that we're trying to convince other people that, maybe not so directly, but maybe we're trying to convince others that they should join us or something. Like, yeah, maybe that's what's happening. Then we have the Page of Swords reversed. And the Page of Swords reversed, I always think of sarcasm, or the kind of witty remarks that people make that are funny but also kind of hurt a little. And so what does that mean? Cynicism? So maybe there's a strong sense of cynicism with us, and I'm thinking that's coming with the Eight of Swords reversed. Sorry, it's not reversed. Eight of Swords is upright. But I'm thinking the denial of meaning of your life is causing you to be cynical. The belief that there's nothing special about you is likely the root of your cynicism. And I feel like the Star card reversed is pointing to the unconscious and bringing to consciousness the fact that because you are dreaming, and because we are Neptune direct in Pisces now, because you dream, because you have dreams, and you have this connection to spirit, essence, the universe, that's what makes you special. What makes every single one of us special. And the key is making an attempt even to communicate with this part of ourselves that creates these dreams, and understanding what it is that we're denying or what it is that we're ignoring. Then we have the Magician. And the magician is our guide into the dreams that Neptune, guided by our daemon, gives us. And they are our guide because this whole process is going to require a deep journey into all kinds of esoteric knowledge we can't really learn anywhere else but in spiritual places. And by spiritual places, I mean places that have not just churches or temples, but mountains and oceans and places where we can see the Milky Way at night. Or even places that make us feel connected to who we are. And I'm talking about like places that hold happy memories when we were children. So that has its own spirit and essence. So it's places like that, not just places of worship or spirituality that leaders have deemed as having this sort of essence. But the Magician is going to guide us to those places, be they natural or man-made, that have the energy to open our hearts and our minds to these hidden aspects of ourselves that we have denied, but that they show up in dreams often, or in moments when we feel overwhelmed with emotion, but we can't really understand why it's happening. Then we have the Six of Cups, which is childhood memories or nostalgic feelings. And more often than not, when we are children, we often understand without knowing that our lives are special, that we are connected to something so much bigger, so much grander. But as we get older, we lose sight of that, and we disconnect from that aspect, from that feeling, because it feels the word I want to say, it feels like we're being too prideful, like it's too much, it's too delusional often, and it feels self-centered, like in the bad sense, egoic. It also, again, in the bad sense. And I'm going to pull another card. Then we have the Six of Pentacles reversed. And here I'm thinking, what I'm hearing is, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Right? So why am I hearing that? I feel like usually that saying comes along when we love something so much that it disappears, or the passion that we have for it kind of dissipates, or I don't know. But I'm thinking, okay, so I'm thinking there's a shriveling of your spirit. The less you communicate with your psyche or the inner self, because for X, Y, and Z reason, the less you're going to be able to connect with it when you need it most. And so it's beginning to shrivel, and the meaning of it is beginning to, I'm seeing ashes, probably because I have incense here, but it makes me think of ashes. Ashes don't really have that what's needed in order for things to grow, because you've burned all the nutrients away. And so the less we listen to our dreams, the more they diminish in meaning. But the beauty of it is we can always cultivate this communication and make it stronger. But the issue is we're going to need to want to do that, and like really coming from our heart, sort of thing. It's not something that can be like, oh yeah, I'll give this a try and see what happens. Like, no, like you, or like, oh, I don't know, it's the popular thing to do now, so let me give it a shot. No, this actually does take some time to learn how to do. And keeping a record of dreams and noticing the patterns that happen will take time, like just naturally, out of dreaming every night, writing down dreams, one night at a time. It takes time. So then we have the Four of Swords. And the Four of Swords is the rest card, a restful card, the card for sleeping, taking a nap, and I think it's pointing to the fact that you need to sleep in order to have dreams. Well, technically, you can have daydreams, you can have active imaginations, meditations, Zen moments, but you do need a moment of rest in order to communicate with this aspect of yourself. And then the bottom of the deck is the Page of Wands reversed. So both pages that showed up, I think, yeah, are reversed. And I think the Page of Wands is pointing to the fact that we need a dimming of our consciousness in order to connect to our unconscious or subconscious. And like lately I've been noticing this image that I get when I see the Page of Wands. It's a candle, like a little candle that is trying its best to give off light in a very dark room. But because it's a small candle, the light can only go so far. And Page of Wands makes me think, like, again, it's like that sort of like, you need to want to do this sort of work in order for it to have the meaning that you're looking for. And right now it doesn't require any money. It's completely free. There's no sort of, you can do it tonight or the next time you wake up and remember a dream. So it doesn't require much to do this sort of work. You do have to be patient with the Eight of Pentacles, the Four of Swords, and I would say the Six of Pentacles reversed speaks about patience as well. In terms of astrology, we have Aquarius shadow with the star reversed. Then we have air signs with the Page of Swords reversed. And we want to think about air signs shadow, which is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Then we have Mercury with the Magician. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. And we have fire signs with the Page of Wands reversed. And we want to think about their shadow aspects as well. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Okay, that is our reading for Neptune in Pisces. I know it did not resonate with everybody, and but that's okay. Please like this video if you haven't done so already. Leave a comment if any thoughts were stirred during the reading, and subscribe, I guess, if you want. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!